This is J.G. Hertzler, General Martok on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you are listening to the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks podcast with Bill Smith and Dan Davidson.
The biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant, your independent Star Trek podcast. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Trek Geeks. We're so excited you're here for episode 104. Wow. 103 other times I have introduced my co-host, and I'm about to do so now. Usually I find some kind of way to put him down, but really, he's not that evolved of a form of life. In fact, if we were going to make first contact, we would pass because he's definitely not yet warp capable. Clearly, the Prime Directive applies here, and we're going to leave him alone for centuries and see if he finally matures. He's the Cro-Magnon-like Dan Davidson. Dan, grunt for me, buddy. Show me a care.
E plegus unum. Thanks for bringing me here, Bill.
Wow. They just never get old, do they? You probably spend a lot of time coming up with these things, or if you don't, you're just really proud of yourself when you come up with something, aren't you?
It's more the latter than the former. I didn't write that one down at all. In fact, I usually don't write them down.
Wow. Well, you do a good job, and I appreciate it. I know. See, that just shows that you love me. So thank you, Bill. It's great to be here.
Dan, we've got a great show on tap today. We're gonna talk about a rather grand concept in the Star Trek universe.
It's a grand concept, and it's kind of a confusing concept, if I do say so myself. And we'll get into details about that. But my directive is Prime. Is your directive Prime, Bill?
My directive is probably very prime, yes.
Excellent. Yes, we are going to talk the Prime Directive in the Star Trek universe in today's episode, and there's a lot of stuff to go over, and it'll be interesting to see how we both feel about this general order, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to look at it mainly from, the Star Trek universe itself and not as a writing device. I mean, certainly it's got great parts to it, and it's got failings as far as a script writing device. And, we understand those and we stipulate those for the record. But we're going to talk more about its influence on the Star Trek universe itself, I think.
I think that's a great idea. See, that's why you're the executive producer.
Me? I just got a promotion. Yeah.
Hey, congratulations.
Well, Dan, why don't you tell the good folks at home how they can send me congratulatory emails on my promotion to executive producer?
Absolutely. On Twitter, Facebook, Skype, and Instagram, you can find us at Trek Geeks. You can also send us an email at podcast@trekgeeks.com. Also, if you want to call us at 508-784-1701 and leave us a voicemail, we would be happy to hear from you. And you can also do the same thing at speakpipe.com/TrekGeeks. Also, as always, our official Facebook group, Camp Kittimer, is available for you to join. Just go over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer. Heather, Jackie, Dan, Bill, or myself will let you right into the group. You can start taking in on all of the discussion. And as a prize, because I will call it a prize, you are going to get early access to the Trek Geeks podcast just for being a member of Camp Kittimer. So that is pretty cool. I like it. But please remember that any comments or messages you leave us in any of these places may be used in a future episode.
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't know that at all, Dan. Thank you. And I'd like to think that by joining Camp Kittimer, you're the prize, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll send special smiley pictures to everybody.
Dan, it's time for the news from TrekNews.net.
That was my Kirk version.
Oh, okay. Spanning the Alpha Quadrant to bring you all the news on all the Star Treks. It's TrekNews.net, online at TrekNews.net. And Dan, first up, I think we can sum this first story up as toys, toys, toys.
Oh my God, am I happy about this. As we know, Star Trek Discovery is coming up soon, and there was a major announcement very recently that McFarlane Toys is going to be creating a special Star Trek Discovery toy line, which will debut in spring of 2018. Oh my God, these toys are going to be freaking awesome.
I love the work they do. You know, the sculpting they put into these figures, because they've made other Star Trek ones. They've made NFL ones for years. You know, they do Assassin's Creed now. You know, we're big NFL fans. I've got a great Tom Brady figure that it looks like the spitting image of Tom Brady, to be honest.
What figure wouldn't be awesome of Tom Brady?
Well, yet we digress. They've got a Super Bowl champion series. They've got Walking Dead figures. They've got Labyrinth, Rick and Morty, Spawn, because of course Todd McFarlane created Spawn. Mm-hmm. But I can't wait to see what they do for Discovery. They're going to be pretty amazing.
I can't wait to see them. I have the McFarlane Borg figures that came out several years ago. There's a Cardassian Borg and a Klingon Borg, and I think it's a human as the third one. The detail in these things is just absolutely mind-boggling, and if they put in the same amount of detail in these Discovery figures, these things are going to be very, very popular.
I have to agree. You know, I think back to some of the other Star Trek collectibles I have, you know, in Rubbermaid storage tubs. You know, I've got a full set of the Playmates ones. I mean, they're not all the same number, but, you know, that was really hard to do back in the day, 25 years ago.
Sure.
But you know, I've still got all those. I've got them for TNG. I've got them for DS9. I've got them for Voyager. I've got them for Generations.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got the Enterprise ones. I can't remember. Maybe it was Art Asylum who did those, I think. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me. But I cannot wait to get a full set of these ones.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm sure that TrekNews.net is going to have first glimpses of these action figures and toys when they're coming close to being released. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that.
That's because they have all the news on all the Star Treks.
All the Star Treks.
All the Star Treks.
All the
Star Treks.
All the Star Treks.
Yeah, Dan, speaking of all the news, you know, today we observe a special anniversary as we record. It's June 4th as we commit this to digital recording. And today marks a particularly special anniversary in the Star Trek world.
It does, and it really shows that we are getting old, my friend. It really, really does. Today, wow, it's even hard to say. 35 years ago today, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan was released. 35 years ago today.
Wow. I remember when it was 10 years and I thought, wow, that's a long time. And now it's like, wow, this movie's been out for most of my life.
Yes. When I saw the anniversary tweet that you sent out this morning or on Camp Kittimer, I'm like, oh my God, 35 years. I was 12 and it seems like it was yesterday. Yeah. And it hasn't aged. That's what's so great about it. Of course, everybody thinks, or most people think, it's the greatest of all the Star Trek films. But just, you know, I think it's more of a punch in the gut to me of this movie being 35 years old than TOS being 50. Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
You know, because I think we came into TOS, you know, when it hit syndication. Mm-hmm. You know, and it was on everywhere, just about, you know, every time of the day. And this was an event. I mean, I remember news coverage of Star Trek II, you know, from one of the Boston TV stations. And I remember them reporting lines around the block for Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
You know, it was the middle of summer and it was hot out and they were interviewing people. And they talked about how the lines in Boston were even longer than they were for Star Trek The Motion Picture, which I thought was fascinating.
I'm not surprised about that. You know, Star Trek The Motion Picture was the first one to come out, but this one was carrying on an original series episode. Ricardo Montalban was very big back 35 years ago with Fantasy Island and stuff like that. So I think it was
I wasn't surprised to see that that was going on at the time with those interviews and news stories on the Boston stations.
Do you remember where you saw Wrath of Khan?
I'm pretty sure I saw it at the General Cinema in Nashua, New Hampshire at the Nashua Mall.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing the motion picture at the Brant on Main Street in Nashua, which was not a very good movie theater. And I think I recall telling people on the podcast that they had the big spotlights going up in front of the theater for TMP, and the line was just around the building. I don't remember what the line was like for Star Trek II at the General Cinema, but I'm pretty sure that's where I saw it.
I saw Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan at the Colonial Theater in downtown Laconia, New Hampshire. I'm pretty sure that our friend Scott Vachon saw it there as well and is probably smiling to himself as I recount this. But I remember it being a hot day, and it's one of those ornate, or back in the day, it was one of those ornate theaters. It's going through a restoration right now, but one giant screen in an old theater, kind of along the similar lines of the Brant. But I do remember afterwards, my sister and I were arguing and fighting with each other, and my mom went up locking her keys in the car. So it was a great afternoon for us.
Nice. Hey, is that theater is that street in Laconia the one that's the weird one-way street that you have to like do a big wraparound to get through? Wow. I remember that street.
It was a great place to see that movie. And I remember being totally freaked out by the city eels going into Chekhov and Terrell's ears.
Yes.
Just seeing it in that huge venue. It was like,
great memories.
I watched it today.
Nice.
In observance. And, I've seen this movie hundreds of times. I can quote it verbatim as I'm watching it. It drives everyone I know crazy. So I usually have to watch it alone. But man, I was right back there. It was a great time.
Did you watch that new director's cut DVD that came out recently?
Oh yeah,
there you go. Is that the one you watched today?
Yeah,
nice, very nice. 35 years, man. I think while we're taking this next break, I'm gonna go get my meds because I'm like old, and then I'll be back to talk with you some more.
And we'll be right back after Dan's Geritol break. Okay, you old geezer, let's talk about raising some money.
Wow. Okay, let's do it. Feel like 90 again.
Yeah, you're looking like Vic Mignogna in the latest Star Trek Continues episode. Except he had makeup on.
Wow.
I know, Dan, we are, I think it's safe to say we're incredibly grateful for the response that we've seen to our Cosplay for Good campaign to benefit the Nevada SPCA with our STLV cosplay.
It really is amazing the amount that we've already raised. We're almost at 50% already, and it's only been out for what, a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah,
it's really, really something. We are so thankful. GoFundMe.com/TrekGeeks. Check it out. It's got all the information of what we're doing. Of course, we're trying to raise $1,000 for the Nevada SPCA, which is the largest no-kill animal shelter in the Las Vegas area. All the money's going to go straight to them, Bill. As you know, it'll never see our hands. And I know you love telling everybody what it is we're going to be doing, and I don't want to take that away from you. So you go, boy.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, it's like, I know that crowdfunding has been something that people have taken a dim view of as of late. We specifically decided to have this money go straight to the Nevada SPCA on purpose. This money is never going to touch our hands. We're never going to see it. It's going to go straight to the facility and to the dogs, cats, and other adoptable animals that could use it the most. So please know, if you donate, not only is it going to be considered tax deductible for you, but it's going to go straight to where it's needed and not in our account first. So you can donate with confidence, I guess is what I'm trying to say, if that
Absolutely.
makes sense. Yeah. So what we're doing, Dan, is I came up with the weirdest idea, and you decided, let's do that.
Yeah.
We are going to do, on the Saturday of STLV, we are going to wear the TNG scant uniform, which some also refer to as the male miniskirt, but it seems to be gender neutral because there are women who wear it in TNG too. It only appeared in season 1, and there's good reason for that. But we are going to put these on and show off our beautiful gams, as it were. And as a result, we are going to raise some money for a great cause. Now, Dan, do you want to tell people about the extra component?
Other than your awesome gams?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we came up. Congratulations, Bill, for this idea. In all seriousness, it's a great way to raise money for the SPCA. Awesome, awesome. We love our dogs, our rescue dogs, and it's a great idea. In addition to the money that we're trying to raise through the GoFundMe site, we have a selfie challenge that we're going to be doing for that Saturday at STLV. So for the first 100 selfies that people take with us in our scants at STLV, and then tag us and the Nevada SPCA, excuse me, we are going to donate an additional $1 to the fundraising. And that's pretty awesome. So you can have $100. But we're not done there yet, Bill.
We're not?
We're not. In addition to that, our awesome friends over at the G&T show have announced that they will match that $1 per selfie extra fundraising. So that's $2 per selfie, an extra $200 that will be going to the Nevada SPCA to help all the four-legged friends that we have out there. It's awesome.
That is so great. We can't thank everybody at G&T enough. They are so kind to us and so gracious. Their generosity is overwhelming, and we can't wait to take all of those selfies and put some money toward a great cause. You know, you mentioned we're both the human parents of rescue dogs, and they have changed our lives for the better. And we just want to try to be able to give something back to this area we go to every year as tourists. So
absolutely,
we can't wait. And here's hoping it's not chilly in the convention hall, Dan.
I don't think that's going to happen, dude. We're going to be in Vegas.
My directive is prime. My directive is prime. And I'm right every time. And this time I think you'll find it's a better day.
Well, Dan, we gathered this week to consider General Order number 1, and that is, of course,
don't go to Talos.
No.
Sorry.
That is, of course, the rule known throughout Star Trek as the Prime Directive. It is by far Star Trek's most far-reaching idea and ideal, in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the Prime Directive of non-interference in other cultures. This is, I know. For however people feel about it, because people definitely have strong opinions on the Prime Directive, we're just going to approach it from the fact that it exists.
It does, and it comes up several times in every iteration of Star Trek. Sometimes it comes up when you least expect it, and sometimes it comes up and it's like, what? But it's out there, and it's something that drives a lot of episodes in either a positive or negative way. I guess I got to say, in my opinion, but we'll get into that later on. It's an interesting general order, very interesting.
You know, earlier this week, we went to Camp Kittimer and asked everybody there to put in their own words what they thought the Prime Directive was, which I thought would be an interesting experiment.
Sure. Very interesting.
And so the directive we gave was, in your own words, how would you explain the Prime Directive to somebody who is brand new to Star Trek? And specifically, we didn't want people copying and pasting, you know, their interpretations of the Prime Directive from other places, or even from, you know, definitions on like Memory Alpha. And we didn't want people referencing other comments. So we at least wanted to find out how people viewed it. And the common theme was the non-interference one. But of course, it just is about everybody says, well, there are exceptions. And I thought that was really the interesting thing. There's a recurring theme that people say that the Prime Directive applies to pre-warp societies only. And I think that's probably one of the things we should talk about first. How would you describe the Prime Directive, Dan?
I guess the best way that I would describe it to, if it was to someone that had never seen the show before, is the Prime Directive is set up that Starfleet cannot interfere with the development of another civilization. With that being said, I am one of the ones that you just mentioned a moment ago. I'm one of the ones that originally had always thought it only was for pre-warp societies.
Now, has your thinking changed about that?
Yes, it has, based on discussions that you and I have had, actually.
Wow, that sounds
Yes.
really interesting.
I'm giving you a compliment, actually. So that's pretty rare for one.
That's incredibly rare. Yeah.
It can be very confusing. It's a very confusing order, first of all. I believe one of the things that we jotted down is that the Prime Directive actually has 47 sub-orders. So you got one general rule with 47 sub-rules in it. So, yeah, that's not too hard to know off the top of your head if you're a captain of a starship.
I know, right? It's almost like you have to run down a checklist. It's interesting because for years I always thought that the Prime Directive also applied to pre-warp civilizations. Mm-hmm. But as I've thought about this, and as we've gotten through some of the other series which have followed the original series, there are plenty of Prime Directive episodes that apply to cultures that have technology. So, from my opinion, I'm almost forced to believe that I think the non-interference portion is one aspect, and then the don't make contact with technologically inferior cultures probably relates more to actual first contact than it does with interference with society. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, let me ask you this. In your opinion, is the Prime Directive and non-interference with first contact for these pre-warp societies, is that kind of all bundled into the same rule of the Prime Directive? That's where a very confusing point comes into me and always has been, especially since our discussions.
Yeah, I think that I think it is intermixed because we can think of some of the times the Prime Directive has been employed, and Memory Alpha actually runs through a great bulleted list of this, and I'm going to hit some of these highlights, probably not all of them.
Sure.
Obviously, if the society already knew of and contacts the Federation, that's different.
Right.
The society sends a distress call. Well, you're hoping somebody is going to pick it up. Could be anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And, Mary, I'm looking at you.
Ugh.
Stop it. The society hails or attacks a Federation vessel. I'm thinking that's probably not the greatest way to introduce yourself. But, then there's also rescue missions. We don't want to interfere, but when there's a call for assistance and aid, Starfleet 99 times out of 100, more often than not, delivers that aid. You know what I mean?
Here's something that I like to throw into the discussion as we're at it right now, because it could be. I'd like to get your take on it. We're talking about if a rescue, if a signal for help is sent out or something along those lines, and then we can get back up a couple of steps to the pre-warp. In my estimation, if someone's sending a signal out into space for another an alien species or someone else to come help them on their planet, chances are they're technologically advanced enough to have some kind of space travel. So I think all of these examples that you're giving would kind of like negate that Prime Directive, which is what you're talking about right now. But it kind of makes sense if you look at it from that direction a little bit easier, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so too. There are times when captains have to make the decision whether or not to suspend the Prime Directive or to just disregard it entirely. But there are clearly others where they have to correct the action of other ships that have been there. I think of a piece of the action.
Yes, absolutely.
I think of false prophets in Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a really great example.
I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Return of the Archons.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely. And those times I think are a little more challenging. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. It puts the captain in a very uncomfortable position, I think. Don't you?
Without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. So for me, I mean, I have to think that the directive of non-interference and the rule of first contact, or whom we should make first contact with, they almost have to be separate and parallel. I know it's not drawn out that way necessarily, but I think it's the only way that I can make the Prime Directive make sense in my own mind.
You do better than I do when you do that, man, because it's something that I've always struggled with and constantly do now. Even watching this for so many years and knowing so many episodes word for word and every scene of everything, it still confuses the hell out of me, to be honest.
Well, I understand. It's well, it's like we said. We understand that the writers play with the Prime Directive to suit their own storytelling needs, but as far as the Starfleet and the Federation goes, it's you can't even really call it an absolute law for how many times it's disregarded by captains.
Is there a specific one you're thinking of?
I'm thinking maybe General Order 24.
No.
Yeah. So we know of 2 instances where the Prime Directive is just suspended in its entirety, completely. The Omega Directive in Voyager.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Which, okay, I get it. It works for that story. And then there's the problem of General Order 24 and A Taste of Armageddon in the original series.
Sure.
Which, for those who are forgetting what it is, it permits a starship captain, sometimes to just destroy the entire surface of an alien world and eradicate the society living there.
It's a good way to put it.
I'm thinking that's not exactly non-interference.
What kind of monster are you?
What kind of monster are you? So there are complexities. If we go back to Enterprise, and I think the episode Dear Doctor really kind of deals with a great pre-Prime Directive situation really well. I mean, yes, Archer kind of telegraphs, pays some fan service to the fact of, gee, I wish we had some kind of rule or doctrine or something, that kind of tells us what we should or shouldn't do. It's a little bonk on the head, but I thought it was a great way for them to examine, well, what did Starfleet do before they had this far-reaching directive?
I think it's a great way that they planted the seed, to be honest, about,
Yeah.
We always talk about, with Enterprise taking place before TOS, all the retcon stuff. They did a good job in a lot of examples for establishing the baselines for stuff that takes place later, but was done earlier. And I think that was a great example of planting the seed for not only the Prime Directive, but in other episodes, like, the entire, the Federation in Enterprise. I don't want to digress too much, but yeah, that episode was a great example of getting it set up so that they had an answer for how it got actually started.
When we talk about the Prime Directive applying to civilizations that have warp technology or even advanced technology, I think of the Klingon Civil War, and Picard doesn't engage Starfleet in that conflict because he says it's an internal matter to the Klingon Empire, even though they're our ally. But, this is something that civilization is going through, and they're not touching it with a 10-foot pole. In fact, it's largely not permitted in general.
You have to wonder if, that's a great example. It's an internal conflict. Have there been other, quote unquote, internal conflicts from members of the Federation that you can think of off the top of your head where they would have gotten involved? I'm trying to think of some and I can't, but I thought that I've always agreed with what you just said and how it's an example of the Federation not getting involved because of the Prime Directive, because of an internal conflict. But I got to think also that it was a little convenient for that episode. And I don't want to talk about the writing aspect of it too much, but I kind of have to go that way with that particular example. It seemed convenient, but at the same time, it works. So it's kind of a give and take.
Oh, I agree with you entirely. There are times when, it's clear that in TOS, there are pre-warp civilizations that have been affected by, undue interference by something, whether it's bread and circuses, or, if I even look at Next Gen, I have to take the episode First Contact as a great example. Here is a culture that has advanced technologically. They're on the cusp of having warp drive, and yet here we are making contact.
Right.
Because they're getting ready to reach out into the world or into the galaxy, so they've matured. Obviously there's some discretion on the part of the captain, but what is it with Riker? He goes down to these planets and he gets hurt or caught, or that's another example of, Riker almost screws it up.
Oh, come on. He never screws anything up. BB North.
I know, right? I know.
The one that always comes out to me in terms of pre-warp society, which is just the one that you just kind of cringe at, and I don't know if this was something you were saving for later, but I'm going to bring it in right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is the Apple. Vol, baby.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of a Prime Directive, I don't know, cluster? That's the best way to put it, I think.
Well, clearly that's a time when James T. Kirk decides, Prime Directive? I don't need no stinking Prime Directive.
Exactly.
I don't like what's happening here.
Yep.
And there's even debate, among the crew itself in some of these episodes. The Apple's a great instance. You mentioned Return of the Archons earlier. Private Little War.
Oh yes,
that's a fantastic example of when we've made these decisions and they've only gotten worse.
Sure.
Or we talked about this episode just the other day and I can't think of the name now. Too Short a Season.
Yeah. Oh yes, with Admiral Jameson. Yes.
Yeah, Admiral Jameson, where he negotiated this peace and it turns out, well, he didn't negotiate the peace. He armed people. He gave them weapons. So yeah, of course there was peace.
Another great TNG example.
Yeah.
Oh God, I just had it in my head and it just went out. The Vulcan offshoot. Who watches the Watchers?
Oh, the Proto-Vulcans. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a great example. Yep.
I that brings up an area of the Prime Directive that has really bothered me for a long time as a guiding philosophy. We don't want to interfere yet. Let's send all this technology down to this planet and build something that's called a duck blind and hide it behind a holographic screen so that nobody can see it and just watch. How is that not potentially interfering?
And creepy.
And creepy.
Insurrection much?
That's it. You know, they have no idea what this technology is going to do to this ecosystem. They have no idea what could potentially go wrong. And in both those instances, something goes very, very wrong.
I don't want to interrupt you. That's an awesome point that I've never thought of until you just said it just now, is what damage could be caused in the ecosystem by setting up these holographic, whatever you call them. I always forget. Duck blind. That's an awesome example of how they do it doesn't work. That's fantastic, man. I never even thought of that for a second, but it kind of goes along the lines of a ripple effect when you change time. And that's kind of the same thing. You could be causing catastrophic damage to the society just by doing something, by spying on someone without them knowing. That's great. I'm very proud of you again. That's twice in one episode.
Well, I'm clearly overachieving by this point. The same argument could be made for just sending a landing party down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they scan things, they evaluate things. And of course, in the scope of a 45-minute TV show or however long it is, you don't see that. You have to assume that there's some preparation that goes on to not, leave the place worse than you found it. But usually we're just beaming down.
Right.
And that's kind of how Riker runs into a problem in Shades of Grey, quite frankly.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, you could, to be kind of funny but kind of serious at the same time, just by beaming down to watch these societies, you could be changing their history without even trying it. Let's say, for example, just going to spitball here.
Yeah.
You beam down to a planet, and as you beam down, when you materialize, your foot is on an insect that you kill. And that insect actually had the cure for a disease that a scientist was going to find if you hadn't beamed down. You've just changed the entire course of that civilization just by beaming down.
Yeah,
I know, right?
I'm so proud of you. Is that how that sounds? Well, in Symbiosis, which I have to say is actually one of my. I know it's not a great episode, but it is one of my favorite Prime Directive episodes because Picard uses the Prime Directive to punish people.
That's a valid point. I hate the episode, but yeah.
I hate the episode, but we both said it's to skip it, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But, he says the Prime Directive isn't just a set of rules, it's a philosophy and a very correct one. History has proven time and again that whenever mankind interferes with a less developed civilization, no matter how well-intentioned that interference may be, the results are invariably disastrous. However, in Symbiosis, Picard actually sets forth an action that forever changes the scope of these two planets. I mean, assistance was asked for, and when he realized that it was essentially a drug deal gone bad, he takes away all the assistance and says, yeah, here you go. But it's going to take us forever to get back.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Let me ask you, this just popped in my head, and I can't remember the episode, and I apologize. I know we just talked about it in See It or Skip It. It was the episode with Crusher being held hostage. Was it the one with Crusher being held hostage when with James Cromwell was the ruler? I might be mixing two episodes, but at the end of the episode, Picard's on the planet, and he says, hey, pretty much what he says is, hey, too bad, you're going to have to deal with this on your own now, and he beams away.
You are thinking of The Hunted.
Yes.
Which is not the one where Dr. Crusher gets
That's
hit.
right. The Hunted, yes. It's, what's the guy with, the guy who bounces off the shields in his little ship.
Roga Danar.
Roga Danar, thank you very much. Isn't that kind of, well, I guess the question is the society that Cromwell was a leader in, were they part of the Federation? Because with Picard saying, hey, you got to deal with this yourself, we're not helping you, isn't that a little opposite of what he did with the Klingon Civil War?
Well, I suppose in a sense, I mean, the key there is, what is this? How does this planet relate to the Federation? Because, of course, the Prime Directive does apply to member worlds of the Federation as well. Mm-hmm. I believe that there's a distress call in The Hunted. If memory serves.
Correct. Yes, I believe you're right. Yes. Good job, man. Geek the Stump is going to be a problem.
Actually, well, it was at the beginning of the episode, Picard and Riker are visiting, and it's because the planet wants to be a Federation member.
Okay.
So they have reached out to the Federation, I'm guessing. And at the end of the episode, Picard's like, yeah, I guess you're not quite ready. Let us know when you resolve this.
See ya.
Yeah, pretty much. So there are significant complexities. There are significant deviations from the Prime Directive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it a good idea to have a non-interference directive? I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, NASA announced that, when we go to space and start visiting other planets, we're not going to employ a Prime Directive type rule. Yeah, we're not going to do it. Do you think that's a good idea?
I don't think that's a good idea at all.
Right? Right?
Yeah, that's a little scary, actually.
Because, I mean, what happens if we find something? Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. I did want to step back for a second. I want to get back to that point in a second, though.
Yeah.
One of the most blatant violations. Oh God, is violations the right word? It's really hard to say. And it's of our favorite captain of our favorite series. It's Ben Sisko.
Yeah.
In the Pale Moonlight, man. What he does and how he does it. It's done so perfectly, but at the same time, my head's exploding trying to wrap around that complete, ignoring the Prime Directive for all intents and purposes.
Well, I mean, is that a Prime Directive violation necessarily?
He totally interfered with other members of, well, not members of the Federation, the Romulans, regular, I don't know what the right word is, but I think it is. You?
I'm not sure, because he drags them into a war, but he didn't necessarily change the development of the planet.
How do we know that? If he didn't drag them into the war, countless billions of Romulans wouldn't have been killed in the war with the Dominion, so that's got to have some kind of change.
Well, assuming, because they painted the picture for the Dominion they painted the picture for the Romulans that the Dominion was coming after them, but there was there's necessarily no intelligence for that, which is why they manufactured the isolytic data rod.
Yeah, I mean we could do a whole episode on In the Pale Moonlight and the consequences and whether or not it was a Prime Directive violation. Oh, right. I'm going to write that down.
So, but we do have other instances like Sisko and For the Uniform. where he essentially poisons the atmosphere of an entire planet just to go after Eddington.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. We talked about that a couple months ago. Yeah, man, oh man.
He not only changes the course of potentially, whatever civilization may be on that planet in addition to the Maquis, because we don't know, but he changes the course of the planet's evolution. And that's just wrong.
Oh, absolutely. And all just for revenge, to be honest. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's probably one of my favorite violations of the Prime Directive of all time. That really sounds bad as I say it.
It's all right. Well, Eddington had it coming because everything had been building to that. I mean, it's just, that's great. I have a question for you. Completely separate from what we're talking about. It's about the Prime Directive and First Contact, but it's something that I was actually, before we recorded tonight, I was talking to my wife Sue about what we were recording tonight. And she brought up the beginning of Into Darkness with the planet of the white mud-caked people with the red trees.
The Nibiru, yeah.
Thank you. And they talk in Pike's office about how he violated the Prime Directive. Did he violate the Prime Directive, or did he violate the non-interference of a pre-warp society? That's where the confusion always comes in.
Well, in that case, he's kind of done a little of column A and a little of column B, because the natural evolution of that species was to be killed by a volcano. Yes,
and now they're worshiping a something that came out of the water, and they're drawing it in the sand with their sticks. I mean, but it brings that. What I wanted to bring it up for is because it brings in what we talked about at the beginning, that confusion point about the Prime Directive versus non-interference with pre-warp society. And they specifically talk about the Prime Directive when he's getting dressed down by Pike in his office later on. So it's one of those, which one is it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think in this case, this is one of those times where, because it's a pre-warp civilization, it's everything. Not only did we interfere, but we made contact.
Yes.
Because now they worship the Starship Enterprise. I mean, we do as a general course of rule, but we're nerds.
I was going to say, who doesn't? Yeah.
The scene is fun at the beginning of Into Darkness, but it's painful.
It is.
It's very painful.
I like how it's done. It's a great opening for a movie, but at the same, you're absolutely right. It is painful.
Yeah. There are, well, in many of the original series, Prime Directive violations, if you want to call them that, it seems like there's a supercomputer that the dim-witted residents of the planet don't know about.
Peace and tranquility to you, friend.
The feeders evolved. The Landru.
Yeah.
Everything's got, these societies have been co-opted by other cultures using technology, and so Kirk corrects it by destroying the technology that controls them.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that this applies also for the episode for The World is Hollow, When I Have Touched the Sky? It's controlled by a computer. They interfere with what's going on with Yanada in their course of where it's headed.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah.
If you're going to follow the letter and the spirit of the Prime Directive, I think it does.
This side of paradise.
Absolutely, this side of paradise.
We could go on, man.
The Paradise Syndrome.
Yes. Yeah.
There's so many. There's so many. Although I have to tell you that one of my favorite aha moments regarding the Prime Directive is the time that a Starfleet crew has some encounters a culture where that culture's Prime Directive is used against them, and it's the Voyager episode Prime Factors. It's like the 9th or 10th episode of the series, so it's early on in the run.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, Harry Kim meets this girl on a planet. They decide they're gonna go see the sunset somewhere, and they wind up teleporting again across half the galaxy. And they realize, wait a second, they've got this massive teleporter technology. If we could adapt this, we could get home sooner.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And the leader of the society, who's really annoying, I got to say, hello, Captain Janeway, says, no, we can't give you our technology. Well, we can't give this to you.
Right.
You know, but could you give us some of your stories? You know,
I'm sorry.
Stories. You know, it's a society that is all about, you know, rest and relaxation and hedonism to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's shore leave. And, you know, the crew isn't so psyched about the fact that this technology exists and there's really nothing they can do about it. And it's kind of somebody else's Prime Directive being used against them. And it's really kind of the first time that turnabout happens.
I guess the foot's on the other hand now, isn't it, Kramer? Are you going to name the movie? Yeah, you don't know what movie it is.
No, I don't know.
It's Airplane. That made me think of another Voyager episode, which completely screws up the civilization, and I can't think of the title of it, but it's the one where Harry, quote unquote, dies. They're on a planet, and there's a whole bunch of people that are like mummified, and it's the one where Harry's in this pod, and he's transported to the society, and they all think that the afterlife is now different than what they've all been trained for. I can't remember the name of that one, and I might be confusing some of the plot details. I saw it recently, but
oh no, you've got it. It's called Emanations.
Thank you, Emanations. That's a perfect example that inadvertent. Now this was an inadvertent one, but they inadvertently completely destroy what this civilization is thought of as their afterlife and religion for millennia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, okay, so let's consider something else. So the next gen episode, Homeward. This is the one where Worf's adopted brother. Nikolai essentially beams up a pre-warp civilization to the Enterprise because, you know, they got to move them off this planet.
Right.
Stuff like that. And clearly that's not the way this should have gone down. Some people have commented that, well, Nikolai's just a citizen of the Federation and not a member of Starfleet, so the Prime Directive doesn't really apply to his actions, but doesn't it?
I would think it does. I don't think it's just specific to non-civilians. But at the same time, here's another question. If what they were doing was being done so that they could potentially save a society without them ever knowing that they were being moved and nothing went wrong, is it interfering?
Well,
I mean, we know that there were problems and there were, you know, the holodeck was, you know, spritzing and stuff like that. But if they were able to beam them up, it's kind of like insurrection when you think about it. If they were able to beam up this village, keep them in the holodeck, nothing ever happened, they never knew that anything was different, beam them to an identical type of planet, and they continued on their way with their civilization, is that an interference? Is that a Prime Directive violation?
I'm torn.
Yeah, you
know, because there's, you know, the natural evolution of this society was changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it brings up larger questions, I think, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
But it's clearly Nikolai didn't do the right thing in any step of the way in this thing. I mean, obviously there were mitigating circumstances, you know, come to find out, you know, he's in love.
You know, but all that being said, we got to see an episode with Michael Dorn without his Klingon makeup, so that's always a plus, right?
That's true. So here's an interesting question for you, and you're a big Mirror Universe fan.
Mm-hmm.
Did Captain Kirk interfere with the development of the Mirror Universe?
Absolutely, 100%, no doubt. He planted that seed in Spock's head, which completely changed the course of that entire universe from the aspect of what the Empire was like.
Is it a Prime Directive violation?
Why wouldn't it be? Because it was a parallel universe and not a civilization of a planet in our own universe?
Well, no, forget the planet aside, but I mean, is it? I feel like it's not.
Oh, I think it is. Definitely it is. I'd be interested to see what our listeners think, because I think it is without hesitation.
You know, if anything, it's almost catering to the Roman-like underpinnings of the mirror universe, society of sorts. Kirk essentially told Spock to assert himself more. Gave him access to the Tantalus device, or at least told him where it was. Moreau said, was supposed to help him, but I have a hard time viewing it as a Prime Directive violation because it was just an alternate universe Starfleet.
No, I don't see it that way at all, man. I mean, there's a lot of times that I can see your point and agree with it. I think it's a perfect example of a violation because he is changing the course of that quote unquote civilization, even regardless of how he did it, with just telling Spock about the Tantalus device and telling him to be the captain of this Enterprise. If you've read the novels of the Mirror Universe and see what happens, Shadows of Empire is a perfect example by David Mack. What happened after he planted that seed in Spock's head, the change that took place was unlike anything of any other type of Prime Directive violation. So I think it is definitely a violation of it.
Yeah, I'm still not on board.
Well, you get on board, sir.
If we apply the Trek Ranks rule of no wrong answers.
That's true. I would like. Speaking of Trek Ranks, I'd like to hear what Morehouse thinks about it. If he thinks it's a violation, Jim, chime in.
I'm pretty sure he does. If you listen to the Trek Ranks podcast.
Okay, well there you go.
Which you don't. So congratulations.
I do have it queued up. I just haven't got.
Yeah, way to go.
Wow, way to throw me under the bus there, man.
Hey, beep, beep, beep. I think that there are some incredibly flagrant violations of the Prime Directive that make great stories, even if they seem a little far-fetched. I mean, you wonder would a Starfleet officer really do that? I'm thinking of Equinox.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah. Yep.
That's just, I have a hard time believing that would actually happen. I don't know.
Year of Hell.
The Year of Hell.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on for hours, man. Yeah,
we could.
It's interesting.
Why Year of Hell? Why don't you explain that one a little bit?
Well, now that after I said it, I'm like, because Year of Hell is kind of like it's a time thing, and everything gets shifted back to normal. So it really isn't. But I don't mean. Well, actually, no, it wouldn't be a Prime Directive violation because it's not the Federation that is doing all of the changes to the timeline. So scratch that. Never mind. Move on.
Scratch it. Reverse it. How about some of your favorite Prime Directive episodes overall?
It's funny. Return of the Archons has always been one of my favorite episodes. It's just a funny episode to me, and how things are with the Red Hour and things like that. That's one that always stands out as a favorite Prime Directive. Who Watches the Watchers, as we talked about earlier, is another one that I've always thought was really, really well done. Those are the top two that I think of off the top of my head. I know there's so many others that we've talked about. A Piece of the Action, even though it's not a Prime Directive violation episode, so to speak, it has ties or it has ties to the Prime Directive at the beginning when they have to go and fix everything, and at the end when McCoy leaves his communicator there. It's like a bookend Prime Directive episode. What about you? What do you have for favorites?
Well, it's there are a whole bunch. I mean, if I think back to Enterprise, I think of Cogenitor.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Which I think is, again, there's no real Prime Directive in that time frame, but it's a really great example of, what interference can do, especially however well intentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think of Return of the Archons right off the bat. That's another favorite of mine. Patterns of Force.
Yes. Oh, God.
I mean, I don't know what John Gill was thinking, man. Come on. Justice, Next Gen, terrible episode.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting Prime Directive study, even if the way it is resolved is essentially Picard going, yeah, we're out of here.
Oh, man. Private Little War, I just thought of.
Private Little War, absolutely.
Yeah.
That one's just ripe with a horrible treatment of the Prime Directive. First Contact, I think, is a great Prime Directive episode, especially for the scenes between Patrick Stewart and George Coe, talking about the first contact with the Klingons and how that was disastrous and how they have some line.
I just thought of one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's Half a Life, the Waxana episode with
Absolutely.
Oh my God, that's a great Prime Directive episode, and that brings the question of she's not Starfleet, but she is an ambassador of a Federation world. Is what she's doing a violation? That's a great one, I think.
I think it's a fantastic one. If I look at DS9, there are just so many. Right off the bat with Emissary.
Oh yeah,
Emissary is a great look at the Prime Directive with an alien culture we definitely don't understand, and all of a sudden we're using their world as a conduit to a different quadrant.
You bring up a good point. Let me ask you this: TOS aside, every series premiere is a Prime Directive episode, I think.
To some extent, yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's very true. Although not necessarily. Well,
which one?
Enterprise. I don't think Broken Bow is necessarily. I mean, I suppose it's definitely a first contact type deal, but it's there's no interference.
Of course, with Discovery coming out, it might not be a first contact.
That's true.
Oh, no, but it will be because it's after Enterprise. Okay, never mind.
Although the Suliban did more to impact another culture than Starfleet did. In fact, they drove us to space or to warping through the galaxy quicker. If I look at DS9, there's you mentioned In the Pale Moonlight. We talked about for the uniform. Inter Arma Enum Sealant Legas is another great one.
That's
oh my god,
fantastic episode. Yep,
I think that's one of the best Prime Directive episodes in all of Deep Space Nine. Voyager has a whole bunch of Prime Directive episodes, and I've always thought of its writing as weaker. But if you look through the list of Voyager ones, there are some pretty solid episodes among these. I'm just going to run through a few of them.
Okay.
There's Caretaker. There's Time and Again. State of Flux.
Yes.
Fantastic episode.
Yep.
Prototype.
Is that the Android one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Future's End, Part 2. Even Part 1, really.
Yep.
Scorpion.
Oh, God, yeah.
30 Days. Omega Directive. Course Oblivion. Relativity. Friendship 1. Even Endgame.
You know what I think is interesting about the examples that you bring up for Voyager and why there's so many? Do you think that's because they're in the Delta Quadrant?
Partially, I do.
Yeah.
It allowed for, I think, better storytelling. At least that was more like TOS, meeting aliens of the week and not interfering in their culture.
Sure.
But I think right off the bat that those are some of the ones that really stand out for me. And it's interesting to me that I think Voyager has more of them, probably even more than the original series did, quite frankly.
It's funny now that you say this and you bring up these examples. As I watch Voyager on H&I nightly now, I'm going to be focusing on whether or not it's a Prime Directive episode.
More absolutely.
Than anything else, yeah.
I think we can boil it down to, on Camp Kittimer, Mikey from the G&T show. Essentially, you can look, but you can't touch. That was his definition of the Prime Directive, because secrets and reasons and stuff.
Sure.
And that's really got a lot to do with it. You can observe, you can report, but hey, leave it alone.
Sure.
And I think that's probably, even though it's a troublesome plot device, I think that really is a great one-sentence summary of what the Prime Directive ought to be or is,
I feel less confused than I did an hour ago.
That's amazing because I am even more confused. It's probably because I'm talking to you.
Well, I was going to say I'm not as confused because I've been talking to you. So thanks, pal.
You're very welcome. But I think the Prime Directive is one of those things that, it's obviously for the Starfleet captains that employ it, it's open to interpretation to some degree. But I think that's true of fans as well. I think we all have what we think the Prime Directive is and how it should be observed. And I don't think that's wrong.
No, I don't think it's wrong either at all.
I think it allows us all to have uniquely different takes on these episodes and these stories and these decisions that the characters, make in the scripts. And I think it allows for great discussion, which is part of the reason I think we wanted to talk about it today.
I can't disagree with that logic, Mr. Vulcan.
Wow. So, I had to throw in a Neelix reference. Oh my God, man. So, Dan, that's the Prime Directive in a bit of a nutshell. I can't wait to see what Discovery does as far as the Prime Directive goes.
Well, yeah, because it's been established, because as we talked about earlier, the seed has been planted with that Enterprise episode, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. Of course, everything that's going to be coming up with Discovery is going to be interesting to see how they do it, but yeah, it'll be in its infancy stages, I would think, at that point, because the Federation's been formed and so forth, so good stuff. DSC.
DSC, can't wait, buddy. Dan, we keep having people come to our Facebook page and our Facebook group, Camp Kittimer, all the time. Lots of new people discovering Trek Geeks. Why don't you tell everyone how they can get this here podcast in their world every single week?
It is very easy. If you're new to the podcast, we make it's so easy that even Bill could do it. So it's got to be pretty easy. Yeah. So all you need to do is head on over to subscribe.trekgeeks.com and find out how you can get this here podcast every Tuesday delivered automatically to your iPod, iPhone, Android, or any other of your favorite mobile devices. Plus, you can listen to the podcast on iHeartRadio, on Stitcher. Go to trekgeeks.com and click on each episode album cover, and you'll be able to listen to our mellifluous tones. Bill, it's your independent Star Trek podcast delivered your way, so make it so.
Wow. That was a great read on that one, buddy. Great job.
Thanks. I didn't screw up.
No, you didn't. You didn't. Dan, of course, we want to thank our friends, the band 5 Year Mission. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't have all this amazing music that we use on the podcast every single week. We want everyone to head out to 5yearmission.net, download all their albums. I mean, we listen to them constantly. You hear them on this show constantly. You should be chomping at the bit to get all those things on your MP3 player, your iPod, your phone, wherever you listen to music. So that's 5yearmission.net. Please show them support and some love, because we're huge fans and we think you will be too.
What's very cool is that sometimes they record in a comic book store. They showed a video of recording in a comic book store. What could be more cooler than that?
I don't know.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, because it was an episode that I saw which was cooler than that. When the Grand Nagus calls Bill and calls upon you to come up with a plan to have concerts in the Gamma Quadrant, you better not fail him, Fark. I'm talking to you. With all the negotiating going on, we may not have recognized Lieutenant Clag from TNG posing as a red-faced Karama, but he was there. So check out the fun, the witty, Ferengi-filled 5-year mission episode, The Rules of Farquisition. Boom. The mic has been dropped, sir.
I can only hope that you lose the mic and don't ever pick it up again. That was just brutal. That was...
You know what would have been more brutal? I was going to do it in the voice of the Grand Nagus.
Oh, my, that would have been absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Yes, it would have been, Quark.
Oh, you should have done that.
Sorry.
You totally have this Wallace Shawn vibe going on right there. That's pretty good.
Sorry.
Oh, that's one of your best ones ever. Oh, my God.
So sorry.
Oh, why don't we have you doing intros for the podcast that way? Oh, my God.
I'll get one set up. I'll do it, man.
I'm not using Beetle snuff. I'm listening to the Trek Geeks podcast.
Oh, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Oh,
I crossed the streams there. Sorry about that. Dan, coming up next week, we're going to talk to a couple of brand new friends of ours.
We are very excited to welcome these two guys. Two guys, one Trek is going to be here on this here podcast, TrekGeeks.com. But we don't even know what we're talking about. We're just having them on, and we're going to have a fun-filled hour of Star Trek frivolity.
Fun and frivolity at that. Josh and Ira have a great podcast. They just dropped season 2 last week. They drop all their episodes at once, and we're going to have to ask them about that, because if I had to do that, I would go crazy.
Ooh.
Editing once a week is hard enough. I can't imagine doing all 20 some odd episodes, in one shot.
That's kind of brutal.
they're watching the original series. One of them is a longtime fan. One of them's a brand new fan, and it's pretty entertaining. They do the exact opposite of what we do.
Wow. The diversity, IDIC. Is it wrong?
No, they watch Star Trek together, and you and I have never watched Star Trek together.
I could not sit in the room with you, man. No way.
Don't I know it? That's next week on Trek Geeks, episode 105.
Oof.
Dan, I know, right? For more great Star Trek discussion, please check out our friends, the Tricorder Transmissions, online at thetricordertransmissions.com. They just put out a new shore leave. They're getting ready for STLV, which is less than 2 months from right now. So if you want to prep for that con, you should be dialing them in every single week. And Dan, of course, for all the latest news on all the Star Treks, please visit our great friends at treknews.net, online at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 104 of the Trek Geeks podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
A coconut moya.
That's it?
What do you mean? That's like the best ever.
Right.
That is funny.
That is funny. Bing bong.
Hey, wow. What happened there, buddy? Did you get kicked in the little, yeah.
Wow, it's a way to start a clean podcast. I appreciate that.
I stopped myself, didn't I?
Yeah. Didn't leave much to the imagination there.
Well, there's not much to imagine in these days. I'm sitting here looking at this awesome... What? I'm sorry, what?
Don't gloss over that. You take shots like that?
Come on, you just got to roll with the punches. Go with the flow. Take it like...
replace you.
What? Wow. All right, folks listening, can he really replace me? Would it be the same here on the Trek Geeks
It'd be better.
podcast? I'm not talking to you right now, Bill. I'm talking to our gracious listeners who love both of us, and I would like to know. Probably no, I don't want to know. Never mind.
It's Andy Robinson is still just a phone call away. I'm sure I could even get J.G. Hertzler.
After I got them originally, so yeah, okay. If you want to take the credit after the fact, that's fine.
Andy's always said he'd be willing to take over for you.
Well, he can try, and he would succeed.
He would succeed.
Yes, he would, because he is awesome, and I am not. Hashtag not awesome.
I'm glad we have this recorded finally. I've been waiting decades for you to say this.
You have beat me into submission, sir, and I am nothing without you.
I only wish... Oh, shut up. So, had to go fridge shopping today.
Yeah, how'd that go?
We wound up spending some money.
But it's nice, isn't it? Did you get the bottom freezer?
We did. It won't be delivered till Friday, though.
Oh, that's too bad.
So all the water and beer fridge, which it's a much smaller fridge that's in our kitchen, is holding the mission critical stuff, and a cooler with ice is holding everything else.
Wow. Yeah, it's no fun going through that.
No.
Oof. Eesh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Serve you right for all the bad things you said about me.
Oh, if that's all that's going to happen, I'm just going to keep piling it on.
No, I actually feel bad. I've gone through bad freezers, and it's no fun at all. Especially when you have zero knowledge of how to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this fridge is like at least 20 years old, too.
That's an old fridge.
Yeah. Huh. So we got a new one coming.
Yeah? Does it have like a TV in the front and all that?
No.
Does it have Wi-Fi?
I don't understand why people need that in their fridge.
I have no idea. No idea. Can you? No. Not next subject, please.
I see these commercials and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Or the one that takes a picture of what's inside your fridge and sends it to you so you can do shopping? How about you just make a list?
Is that a real thing? Because I have not seen that.
Oh yeah, that's a real thing, my friend.
That's absurd. What are we turning into? We're going to be those people on the ship on WALL-E in the Pixar movie. Just like on those floating like beach chairs and not even doing anything.
I haven't seen it, but
okay. Well, you'll know what I mean. Anybody?
We're going to be the feeders of Vol.
Wow, it's interesting that you bring that up at this particular time.
I wonder why.
That's interesting.
I got nothing.
I don't know. David Soul was in it. I know that.
Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah.
That was my favorite 70s cop show. Those are my favorite shows of all time.
Sliding across the hood of that car in the start. Oh, yeah.
Actually, I think that was Paul Michael Glazer who did that. He was the one who jumped off the fire escape and landed on the roof.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know which one slid across the hood. I just thought it was cool back then.
Do you know which one David Soul played?
Character, he was Hutch, wasn't he?
He was.
There you go. See? Yeah.
He was.
I had a 50-50 shot, so, you know.
You really did. It's kind of like Stump the Geek. I mean, the answer's right there on the tip of your tongue, and you just got to take the chance.
Assignment Earth. Cat's paw.
For the world is hollow and I have touched the sky.
Oh. Requiem for Methuselah. Oh, I said it without screwing up.
No, you didn't.
That's good stuff.
Errand of Mercy.
Oh, that's another one. Yes. Turnabout Intruder. Oh, just they roll off the tongue, man.
That last episode aired this week, back in 1969.
Do you like how I did that?
That was good.
Yeah. Janice Lester. Yeah.
Still worse than Spock's brain.
What planet were they going to be buried on? Tell me. Come on, quick. Can't look it up. Interment will take place on...
That's a Stump the Geek question. That's not a Geek the Stump question.
Okay.
And we don't do planets, remember?
Well, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just asking if you know it. I would
sorry, it's a rules violation. You lose.
There's no rule going... We're not playing the game right now, jerk.
It's a rules violation. You lose.
Your face loses. You make no sense. You make no sense. I can't even talk to you.
That would be the ultimate joy in my life if you couldn't talk to me. You have no idea.
Are we ready to do this?
I seriously question whether you are, but I have been ready.
This is going to be the most, hi, Bill, I'm glad to be here, show that you've ever had. Yep. See,
I don't even know what that means.
It means that I'm not going to give it. I'm just going to talk regularly. Not going to be any emotion. I'm going to be Data tonight on the show.
So you mean you're going to be Dan Davidson? Because you do put our listeners to sleep. Remember?
Heather, can you please help me here?
They're never going to hear this part.
Jeez. Oh, sad.
You are. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
First time for everything.
All right.
Here we go.
All right.